Welcome to Tea and Tarot with me, your host, Yashna. Each week I'll share what I've learned as I dive deeper into the world of tarot. I've got my cards in front of me, my cup of tea, and I can't wait to share this journey with you. This is Tea and Tarot.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of Tea and Tarot with me, Yashna. Today we are going to jump into the Hermit, which is the next of the Major Arcana on our journey. It is Major Arcana number 9, and wow, we're really starting to get through the deck, which is really cool. I mean, we're still very close to the beginning. We haven't even gotten halfway through the Major Arcana, but slowly getting there episode by episode, which is very exciting. It is also funny because the Hermit card is being read at a time where I'm like, I need a break. Like, I wish I could just tune out everything around me, tune out everything in the media, everything that's going on in the news, just take a break and hit pause on everything, but it is much easier said than done. But a nice, apt timing to be going through this card, and maybe I'll come out of it with some insight or some tips on how to hermit. So let's do it. Let's jump into it. Let's talk about the Hermit. In the old Visconti Sforza decks, the Hermit was actually titled the Old Man instead. In that deck and other older decks, the man holds an hourglass, which hints to the Hermit's alternate name, Time. The Hermit is kind of closely parallel to the imagery of Father Time. Father Time being a fictional character shared in stories who has power over time itself to pause it, rewind it, move it forward, all those things. But later on, the hourglass was swapped out with a lantern, which might have been a misinterpretation from artists or an intentional shift to change the meaning slightly and bring the Hermit into a new light. Haha, pun unintended. Over time, the Hermit was depicted in several different ways. In one deck, the Tarocchi of Metelli, he has angel wings, which is maybe a hint towards facing death or embracing death, kind of tying to the afterlife. In an 18th century deck, he's on crutches by a tomb with an hourglass pierced by Time's arrow, which is definitely a lot more symbolic of death and the afterlife. And beside him is Christ's symbol, which is a stag, a white stag. Later on in the 20th century, the Hermit's staff is entwined with a snake in the shape of the rod of Asclepius, I think, which is a symbol of Hermes, who's the Greek god of healing. While the Hermit is more directly linked to Hermes and Mercury, who's the ruler of the astrological sign Virgo, there's also evidence that he could be associated with the Roman god Saturn instead. Or not god, but Titan. And the reason for this link is that the Hermes looks to be similarly portrayed by a card called Saturno in the Tarocchi de Mantegna deck. Saturn, also known as Cronus in Greek mythology, was a Titan god who ate his children because he believed in a prophecy that foretold that they would overthrow him. But by eating his children, he just solidified the prophecy to become true because when they escaped, they overthrew him. But his act was almost a way to stop the passage of time and try and delay what was inevitable per the prophecy. Another interesting tidbit looking at the history of this card is that the Hermit may be the embodiment of the tarot's hidden virtue, prudence. While prudence may more directly be linked to the Hanged Man or justice, the Hermit may have the first hints and creepings of prudence, especially with some of his early portrayals. The virtue of prudence is around discretion and careful planning, which seems to align with this card pretty well. So that's all I got on the history of the Hermit. So now looking at the cards in front of me, we'll start with the Rider-Waite deck interpretation. But in the card, there's a man standing alone holding just a staff and lantern. One could see him as the fool from the beginning of the journey, having grown up and become old, holding the same staff that he started the journey off with, but could also be seen as a different person. The Hermit needs privacy and time away from everything else. He has only the light in his lantern to guide him and push him forward, but he takes a moment to pause and enjoy the silence and space around him without rushing to his next destination too fast. His staff represents self-support. As noted, the lantern is a divine light to help guide his path. The 6-pointed star is a symbol of hope and guidance. And the man being old and depicted the way he is kind of represents the archetype of wisdom. Moving on to the Light Seers deck and how it's depicted in my deck. Actually, let's start off with reading the story about the Hermit before jumping into what all the symbols mean. So reading the Hermit story from the Light Seers, Tarot for Light Seers guidebook. She walks the path, using her lantern to light her way through the dark corners of the night. She has learned all she can from her current situation, so she drops her candle, her devices, her connections to other people's opinions and voices. She even leaves her trusted tarot cards behind, for she knows that it is time to set the traditional tools aside and walk the rest of the path alone. It's the only way that she will be able to hear the beating pulse of her own spirit, her only true guidance. Her heart leads her to the top of her inner mountain to spend some time in quiet contemplation. She looks out at the horizon and understands that her own internal compass may shift after she passes through this process of integrating her shadow and light. Here, at the precipice of her knowing, she sits in introspection. She forges her faith. She listens. She up-levels her belief. She feels. She journeys. She learns. Oh, an enlightenment, an awakening, an illumination. When she is ready, she knows she must say goodbye to her hermit experience and return to her life below. If she doesn't, she risks becoming too isolated and withdrawn. She knows she wants to experience the richness and fullness of life with others. With gratitude, she leaves her steady candle burning brightly at the foot of the path where it will illuminate the way for others. She no longer needs it to see where she is headed, as she has become her own brightest light and can safely illuminate her way home. In the card, a woman is meditating, levitating in space, which represents time away, inner focus and light, solace, and knowing who you are and what you're made of. The dots are a trail of light she left behind, ripples of change, or could even be seen as breadcrumbs from the universe. The lamplight is similarly representative of guidance and enlightenment, but interestingly, she has left her lantern at the base of the mountain, which shows that she no longer needs that external light because she is now looking towards the light that comes from inside herself. The lights and stars around her show the presence of the divine and a connection to something greater than herself. Jumping into what this card means, the general meaning from the Rider-Waite deck is live quietly for a time. In the Light Seers deck, the quote around the card is, "The guest of honor is your soul." The second optimistic message shared in the guidebook is, inner sage, inner mentor, inner guide. Show me my brightest light so that I may see with all of my heart. When this card is pulled, it's a big sign that you need time for inner reflection, need time for meditation, contemplation, soul searching, or something similar. It's time to hermit and take time away from the chaos of a busy life and find your guide within. In the reverse position or shadow seer meaning, it could indicate you've been isolating, withdrawing from others, or feeling lonely. It could indicate a lost sense of purpose or ignoring your inner voice and feeling like a misfit. In a love relationship, this card isn't too surprising. It indicates needing time to yourself and maybe focusing on self-care and self-love rather than focusing too much on an existing partner or a quest of finding one. In the reverse, it could indicate the opposite in that you've been isolating too much and need to open up. You might be feeling lonely, so it's time to put your fears aside and venture out. Around money and career, it's time to reflect on who you are and what you're hoping to achieve. You may have been ignoring your inner voice too long, and it's time to look inward and reflect. In the reverse, it can mean really tuning out others and listening only to your inner guide and trying to focus more on your voices rather than all the external thoughts around you. Around health, this is a great card to symbolize taking a moment and really just taking a deep breath. Make sure you check in with yourself and you're taking time to meditate and let your mind rest. In the reverse, it could mean being spread too thin and not having time to yourself to reflect and process. And then finally, around spirituality, this is a big card for enlightenment. It's a big card linked to divinity and general spiritual journeys. So when you pull it, it could be a really good time to start meditating if you haven't before, or just lean more into your spiritual and inner self. Really take time to dive into that aspect of yourself and dig deep there. So that wraps up the Hermit content that I have. Stay tuned and I will be right back. I am doing a reading with my brother and we are going to be doing the Hermit spread from the Tarot for Light Seers guidebook. So stay tuned and I'll be right back. Okay, I am here with my brother and we are doing a tarot reading together. We're going to do the Hermit spread from my Light Seers guidebook. But before we start, just a question I ask everyone I do this for. Have you ever had a tarot reading done before?
Yes, by you.
I did a reading for you before?
Yeah, at your place. Like, a while ago.
Oh, I did.
It was like a simple one.
Oh, yeah, this is before I got back into tarot again as part of this whole podcast thing. Mm-hmm. What did you think at that time? Do you think, like, tarot was accurate, or did you have any thoughts coming out of it?
It was cool. It's, like, just a way to think about things differently. That's how I see it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we're going to do your second tarot spread then, ever. And we're going to do the Hermit's Inner Lamp, which is a spread for finding your way. So we're going to draw 3 different cards for it. So to start, we are going to shuffle the deck. So I already shuffled it a bit after my last reading, but I'm just going to do one more shuffle. Oh no. One more shuffle to kind of reset it. And then you are going to take this deck and you are going to shuffle it as well while kind of thinking about what you want answered. So this is kind of a healing spread. So thinking about that. If there's something specific in mind, or just like the general theme of it works too if there's nothing specific. And it doesn't have to be shuffled super well, just enough to imbue your energy. Okay, cool. And now, since this is just 3 cards, we are going to split the deck 3 ways. So you're just going to pick the deck up wherever makes sense and then split it into 3 piles. 1, 2, and 3. Cool. Cool. So we're going to flip each of these cards over. So the first one is the Source, which is the Knight of Cups. Oh, interesting.
Why?
Are you stressed about love or anything?
No, not really.
The second card is the Queen of Pentacles in the reverse position. And then the third card is the lamplight. Insights into your evolution and the outcome. This is kind of interesting. I'm going to move these out of the way, and then we're going to reorder this to match the picture in the book. But this is the 3-card spread. And then I'm going to do a quick look-see, because I know some of these cards, but not all of them. But the first card is the Knight of Cups, and this one is for the source. What needs to be healed, and where does your healing journey begin? So the Knight of Cups is like the classic romantic card. That's what he typically represents. But the other thing he kind of embodies is being in tune with your emotions and making sure he knows what he wants and what he's trying to achieve. So while he definitely like embodies like the classic romantic, like rom-com-esque personality, it's really about being in touch with what you want, making sure you are like seeking the connections that you want, and yeah, just really tapping into your emotions. One thing where Bob and I are talking about that's interesting is the Knight is like a character of the cups, and it goes page, knight, queen, king, and we were saying the Knight is like the young adult, so it's like maturing in the cups realm, and the cups is about being about emotions usually. So it is about maturing in those emotions. And then the second card you have is the Queen of Pentacles. The Pentacles are more materialistic usually, but the Queen is kind of that next step on that journey of maturity around it. But the second card is representative of the illuminated path. So where do you go from here? What methods, mindset, or approach could help you? So the Queen of Pentacles is someone who is very grounded, mature. She is a healer. She is very self-assured. She is confident in who she is and feels grounded to the earth and like her surroundings. So she's in a very stable place. But in the reverse position, it could mean feeling imbalanced. There could be some stress in that situation. It could be maybe financial or more materialistic, given it is about pentacles. So that could be a stressor and something that is like part of this path that you're taking. So like, where do you go from here? Mindsets and approach. The Queen of Pentacles reminds you to remember to stay connected with what really grounds you. Figure out what are those things. Nature, what's at home, who are the people you're around, how do you make sure you're not overexerting your energy so you're really protecting yourself and your own interests. So those are kind of lessons to keep in mind to help reduce those stressors and feel fully grounded again. And then the last card is the Six of Swords, which is about insights into your evolution, outcome, and the deeper wisdom you'll be gifted. So the Six of Swords is a transition card. It's about moving past shadows or trauma that might have hurt you in the past, or moving past like something else that has kept you stuck, but evolving past that and being able to move on from it and start a new journey and a new path. So it could mean like trying to seek assistance from others. The crows are helping her move her boats, so she's finally seeking assistance in order to move past the hurt she was in before. So it could mean making sure that you're looking for assistance from others and you're actually seeking their help to move forward. It could also mean that there's something in your past that might be anchoring you, or something that you think you still need to hold on to, but this card is a reminder to like keep moving forward and like keep moving past that. Yeah, that one's kind of an interesting final card for it, but I think a reminder, especially around what is the deeper wisdom you'll be gifted, whether it comes at the end of this journey or at the beginning of it, of just sometimes old chapters do need to close in order to move on to a next one.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. I mean, as I'm nearing graduation and starting to think about new chapters, because I'm also trying to take like a new research position starting this semester and see what comes of that. And so nearing graduation, I do feel some of those like emotional things where I'm trying to like stay in touch with myself and not get too caught up in like what I'm trying to achieve long term, because I think that can get like I can get really in my head about that, about like my long term goals of what I'm trying to achieve versus just like taking things one step at a time. So yeah.
Yay.
I like the emotion card.
Yeah.
Because you said like it's about just being in touch with your emotions, which is important to me.
Yeah, and that goes really... Actually, they all kind of tie in well, especially around emotions, because it's about, like, being in tune with your emotions, knowing what you want, being grounded and protecting yourself and those emotions, and then making sure you move past anything that's hurtful or keeping you stuck so you can, like, continue your journey and move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for joining me. This was fun. Yay. Thank you for listening to Tea and Tarot with Yashna. This episode was produced, hosted, and edited by me, Yashna Bensel, and brought to you by Tea Time Podcasts. The tarot reading was done using the Light Seers deck by Chris Ann, and all card visuals were from the Light Seers deck and the Rider Waite Smith Tarot deck. Research was done using Wikipedia, The Ultimate Guide to Tarot by Liz Dean, Tarot for Light Seers by Chris Ann, and many, many Google searches. Music was made using SoundRaw. Join me next week for another episode of Tea and Tarot.